Hey everyone, today we're going to start talking about integers and how we use integers to represent different situations in a real world context, and we're also going to discuss the meaning of zero. So a negative number, which is part of the integers, is a number less than zero. So you could pick any number less than zero. So I pick negative 18, you could pick negative 50, you could pick negative 1,000, it doesn't really matter, as long as it's negative. And integers are the whole numbers and their opposites. So we're going to take a little bit of a break from decimals and fractions, and we're going to talk specifically about whole numbers and their opposites right now. So my integer examples are going to be things like 0, negative 5, 27, negative 8,362, 10,471. All of these things are whole numbers that are either positive or negative, and they all have an opposite. So my non-examples of integers are going to be things like negative 2/3 or 0.25 or 1/2. Fractions or decimals, whether they are positive or negative, are not part of the integers. So now we're going to talk about how, how we represent context situations, so real world situations with integers, so whether the situation is represented by a positive number or a negative number, and then what the meaning of zero is in that situation. So here you can see in the middle, it says zero can have different meanings based on real world context. Sometimes zero represents the amount that does not change. Zero can also be used to represent real world ideas such as sea level. So we're going to talk about several situations where we are looking at where zero represents no change in the information or whether zero represents zero in that context. So this says a temperature decrease of 15 degrees. Decrease means to go down. So my integer is going to be negative 15. And when I talk about this decrease in temperature, I don't know what it decreased from. So when I talk about the meaning of zero, I don't know what the 15 degrees relation is to zero. I don't know if it was from 85 degrees. I don't know if it was from 0 degrees. I don't know if it was from negative 25 degrees. All I know is that there was a temperature decrease of 15 degrees. That means that if there was a decrease of 0 degrees, there would be no change in that temperature. So this means no change. This next one says a deposit of $310. Now, a deposit is where you take your money and you put it into the bank. So we're putting it into our bank account. So this is going to be a positive value. So the money in my bank account is increasing. It is going up with this deposit. And it's the same situation as the first problem. I don't know where it was increasing or decreasing from. I just know that the money in my bank account increased. So if I put $0 into my bank account, then the money in my bank account is not going to change. So this is no change as well. Now the next one says 42 feet above sea level. Now above sea level is going to be a positive number, so I'm going to use positive 42 to represent this situation. And in this instance, we're going to talk about what sea level is. So if I'm 42 feet above sea level, well, where is sea level? When I'm thinking about, here's the ground, if I've got mountains and then I've got valleys, here's my sea level. Well, this is going to be above, this is going to be below, and sea level is going to be 0. So this sea level is represented by the number 0. So the meaning of 0 is 0 feet, because 0 equals sea level. The next one says 3 strokes under par. Under is going to be negative, so negative 3. And in this one, very similar to the last one, par represents a score in golf. Now, in golf, par is the number of shots it should take you to get the ball in the hole. If you take more than that number of shots, you are above par. If you take less than that number of shots, you are under par. So in this case, par is going to be 0. So 0 means 0 in this case because 0 equals par. The airplane descended 3,000 feet is going to be negative 3,000. And this goes back to the idea of the temperature outside decreasing, or the deposit of $300. I don't know where the airplane was. I just know that it went down 3,000 feet. If the airplane doesn't go down at all, that's going to be no change. The next one says an elevation of 2,500 feet. An elevation means that it went up, so 2,500 is going to be positive. And in this particular one, I'm going to make an argument that 0 represents 0 because 0 equals sea level. And whenever I'm talking about elevation, I'm talking about elevation as it relates to sea level. So when I say an elevation of 2,500 feet, that means that I am 2,500 feet above sea level. So because 0 equals sea level, 0 represents 0. A loss of 8 yards is going to be -8. And in football, when you are on the field, you could start at any point, and your goal is to gain 10 yards in 4 tries. So we don't know where the ball is when it started. All we know is that we lost 8 yards. So if I lost 0 yards, my position on the field did not change. So this is going to be no change. Same thing on this next one. It says a 15-yard gain. So that 15-yard gain is positive, but I still don't know where I am on the football field in relation to anything else. All I know is that the ball moved forward 15 yards along the field. So this is also going to be no change. If I gained 8 pounds over Christmas break, that's going to be a positive 8. There is weight being put onto my body. And I don't know where I was when I started, so I don't know what this 8 pounds relationship is to 0. So 0 is going to be no change. Because if I gain 0 pounds, then my weight didn't change. And then this one, we talk about this one as it relates to this one up here, because a temperature decrease of 15 degrees and 15 degrees below 0 outside use the same value, and they're also going to be represented by the same integer, because if I'm below 0, I'm at -15. But in this one, 0 represents 0 degrees because it says below 0. It tells me what temperature I am at in relation to 0. So in this one, 0 is going to represent 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is writing an integer to represent a situation, whether that integer is positive or negative, and then describing the meaning of 0. The last thing I'm going to talk about really quickly is how to graph integers on a number line. When I graph integers on a number line, I usually put 0 in the middle. And all of us should know how the positive part of a number line works. The positives go to the right, or the positives go up. Which means that the negatives are going to go to the left or down. And now when we do the positive part of our number line, we know that the numbers count up going away from 0. So 1, 2, 3, and then here the same way, 1, 2, 3. Now when we add the negative part of the number line, we need to count away from 0 using the opposites of those values that I put on the number line. So -1 would come first, then -2, then -3. So the opposites should match in distance to the opposite sides of 0. 0 is like your midpoint. It's the great divide between positive and negative, and then your value should be counting up, going away from 0, whether it's positive or negative. So on my vertical number line, I'm going to start with -1 and then go down to -2 and then down to -3. In negative land, the further away I get from 0, the smaller my number is. So those values need to increase as they are going away from 0 because those numbers are actually getting smaller. So when I graph an integer on the number line, here's my 0, here's -1, -2, -3. I'm going to put a dot on -3. For this one, -1, -2, -3, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, -4 is all the way back here. +2 is over here. And then -1 is back here. So the number line helps me to put these values in order from least to greatest because I go from left to right on my number line. So -4 would be the smallest, then -1, and then +2 is actually the biggest number. For this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So as I head towards 0, my value should be getting smaller. As I head away from 0 on this side, my value should be getting bigger. So -3, 0, -2, and 4. So when I put those values in the number line, the most difficult part is going to be getting those negative values in the correct order because we already know how the positive side of the number line should look. It should count up away from 0. The negative value should do the same thing in the opposite direction. It should count up going away from 0 towards the negatives. This is writing integers in context situations, so deciding whether a situation should be represented by a positive number or a negative number, and then describing the meaning of 0 as either no change in that situation or does 0 represent 0, and then how do we plot on a number line by adding the -½ to our number lines.